Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the Pulse News on 21st March newspaper front page dawn. Profiting of the poor, one small loan at a time. Rural communities in Sindh are under a deluge of microcredit thanks to the lax lending practices by microfinance providers. By Kazim Alam in Larkana. By Kazim Alam in Larkana. Mariam Bibi has taken agricultural loans 8 times in as many years from a different microfinance banks MFBs. Her first loan was rupees 12,000, which she paid back on time and qualified for a bigger one in the next borrowing cycle. Her last loan amounted to rupees 45,000. On a paper, she is a perfect microfinance consumer. She is a poor, divorced woman who runs a small-scale livestock business in a tiny village on the outskirts of Larkana. Plus, she has maintained a perfect credit history for 8 straight years. But there is a big lie in that well sounding customer profile. She neither owns nor runs any business. In fact, she has had no source of income throughout her life. I live with my brother and his family. I don't even know what he does with the money he borrows using my national identity card. All I get from him against every loan is rupees 500 for my thumb impression, she said. Mariam Bibi is one of the seemingly countless people in rural Sindh whom MFBs and microfinance institutions MFIs falsely classify as farmers on uh, loan application forms. Banks use the group lending technique to give microloans to batches of 4 to 6 people. The group leader takes responsibility for all its members, who are usually drawn from the same close knit community. As a result, access to a microcredit has become incredibly easy, though expensive, in a rural Sindh, whether it's to settle a gambling debt, pay for a dowry, or buy an expensive mobile phone. All one needs are two photographs, a valid national identity card, and a thumb impression verifiable through the biometric system. A couple of members in a typical group may actually be farmers, but most of them have nothing to do with farming, community leaders say. At best, their borrowing consists of opportunity. Women from the Sindh Rural Support Organization (SRSO) come to our village on Suzuki vehicles every January. They go from door to door, encouraging women to take microloans, said Zahida Bibi, who borrowed rupees 45,000 from the MFI last year. Her sister also borrowed an equal amount at the same time. She admitted they lied on the application form that they were farmers. SBP rule floated. That's because the State Bank of Pakistan, SBP, has explicitly asked microfinance providers to offer credit primarily for asset creation and encouraging livelihood activities. As such, a few MFBs and MFIs in the area give out loans for personal use. Neither the loan officer nor the verification team asked Zahida Bibi and her sister for proof of their sources of income. They promptly received the money and handed it to their brother. He used the money on an extravagant circumcision ceremony for his newborn. But when the payback time came a couple of months ago, the two sisters were at their wits' end, and the recovery teams humiliated us publicly. They threatened and they'd bring the police next time and put us behind the bars, she said. They paid off the debt by selling whatever valuables they had in their homes. They also faced domestic backlash as one of the husbands threatened divorce over the public spectacle. Their brother, who worked in Karachi and actually spent the money, couldn't care less. Only a lawful and acceptable business language and a professional attitude should be adopted in establishing contact with clients. MFBs should not harass customers or family members, and the SBP said in an emailed statement. But as for the field staff of MFBs, the regulatory advice seems to have fallen on deaf ears. Bank people are polite when they want us to take the loan, but the recovery phase is impersonal and rude, she said. Banks send non local loan collectors who resort into public humiliation as a recovery tool without hesitation, she added. The sisters paid rupees 25,000 to 27.7% in interest on an aggregate sum of rupees 90,000. SRSO, GM Microfinance Shazia Sheikh, and the company secretary Masoodul Hassan did not respond to the questions about the MFI's lending practices and alleged recovery method despite repeated requests. The government and the central bank have been actively promoting microfinance to help the poor, particularly women, develop income generating assets and become financially inclusive. The gross loan portfolio of Pakistan's microfinance industry has grown at an astonishing average of 30% per annum during the last 10 years. It amounted to rupees 324 billion at the end of 2020. Fresh disbursement in October, December 2020 were rupees 108.9 billion, up 32.6% from the preceding quarters. The number of disbursed loans increased 43.5% to 3 million over the same 3 month period. Larkana district alone recorded over 58,000 active borrowers in the last quarter with the gross loan portfolio of rupees 3.6 billion. misuse of ID card. Another microfinance borrower, Ali Heather, said he'd used his wife's identity card to borrow rupees and to borrow from SRSO as many as 6 times in the recent past. I'll borrow again because my son is about to get married. People will laugh at me if it's a simple ceremony. Telenor Microfinance Bank, one of the largest players in the industry, officially denied giving out simultaneous loans to members of a single family through, though, multiple loans within the same household are not allowed. The sociological fallout of lax lending practices can't be underestimated. Jafar Hussain, who works as an officer clerk at the NGO for rupees 7,000 a month, borrowed rupees 30,000 from Khushhali Bank last year for his son's circumcision ceremony. He paid back the loan with a 26.6% interest by using the proceeds of his mother's BC committee. But then he got another loan of rupees 40,000 on his wife's card in January this year. That was to hold a majlis for his father who had passed away in August 2020. In addition to that rupees 40,000 loan, his family owes more than rupees 50,000 to the local grocery store. I told them clearly I was no farmer. I don't know what they wrote in their farm, but I got the money anyway, he said. The debt burden is now being shared by his younger brother, Raza Hussain, who works as an admin assistant at a small local business. My mother is in a constant state of depression because of his habitual borrowing. I say, let the police take him away and lock him up once and for all. He is only made our lives miserable. Khushhali Bank was approached for comment, but it chose not to respond. Most affected by the easy availability of credit are the families of gamblers. Jan Muhammad, a vegetable grower in the late 40s, says his father has at the moment more than rupees 2 million rolling debt from a number of sources. Since his father is too old to qualify for a bank loan himself, he uses the identity cards of his two wives and 5 sons and daughters to borrow. I tried to stop him once. He made the scene and told the community I attacked him physically. My mother slaps herself in grief and loudly curses his habit of gambling and borrowing, said Muhammad. Almost all adults in his tiny village of hundred thousands have borrowed from microfinance providers at least once, he added. Zero tolerance to lies. The SBP requires loan officers to visit a borrower's place of business and assess their cash flow. Telenor Microfinance Bank also said in its response it exercises due diligence of existing customers and monitors the utilization of loans to ensure it is for the stated purpose only. As for the alleged falsification of loan, loan application by its field staff. Telenor Microfinance Bank said it has a zero tolerance in this regard. We go to extreme plans in um, vetting as well as monitoring activities of critical staff, and this has enabled us to minimize the number of cases of wrongdoings. The SBP refrained from stating whether it has penalized any MFBs for rigging the loan approval process. If any violation is observed in this connection, the SBP takes adequate measures to curb such practices. Nadeem Hussain, who founded and ran a microfinance bank before selling his stake into the Telenor Group in 2016, said that to ensure a borrower will spend money for the stated purpose is next to impossible. Verifying each case will add unto the overall cost and further increase and interest rate, he added. The SVP is laid back about it. Strict action will bring down the number of active borrowers from 7 billion to 2 billion, he said. Advocates of easy access to microcredit claim the facility saves potential borrowers from loan sharks who charge up to 300% interest and are far more ruthless in the recovery method. But community leaders say the quick availability of credit at 28 to 30% of the people on the bottom rung of a rural economy lives leaves them with no excuse to satisfy to stay away from avoidable expenses. Custom of sorts. Rabina Bibi, a poor woman with a few possessions, says her community now expects her to hold a fancy wedding ceremony for her daughter despite her modest circumstances. Collect cards and borrow from the bank like everyone else, they'll say, she explained. Letting one's acquaintance use their identity cards of bank borrowing has become a custom of sorts. It is considered rude to refuse somebody your card if they are in need of cash. The rent-a-car tradition has taken root and made unnecessary borrowing rather desirable. Nifty sales techniques have buried the nugget of ancient wisdom that holds debt to be intrinsically bad, something that carries limited upside potential, but unlimited downside risks, especially for individual borrowers. The microfinance industry takes pride in its near perfect recovery ratio, a benchmark that community leaders say makes the slow thinking CEOs blind of the corner cutting by their field staff in faraway villages. The fear of social embarrassment in small communities makes people pay back debts by either taking out fresh loans or selling valuables. It works like a self um, pers- perpetuating cash spinning machine and allows microfinance providers to claim a lot more credit than their actual accomplishments warrant. My worst mistake was to hand out my card to my brother's friend. He collected 8 cards, bribed bank officials, borrowed a huge sum, and bought himself a piece of land, said Akhtar Abbas, a first time borrower who barely makes ends meet by working as a laborer. It's been a year since the loan became due. Now the recovery staff comes to his place of work every few days and publicly shames him into paying off the loan. I never borrowed a single rupee in my life. I'd let my kids sleep on empty stomachs, but never bring home borrowed money. Debt is a curse. Names have been changed to protect the identities of the borrowers. And in the end, the formal request, if you have not yet, please subscribe our channel and press like and bell button to get the fresh from us. Thank you for watching. Have a nice time. Goodbye.